Night had fully descended upon the monastery of San Giovanni Rotondo. The stone walls, which by day echoed with prayer and footsteps, now rested in profound stillness. The corridors slept. The chapel doors were closed. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself feared disturbing what was about to unfold. In a small, sparsely furnished cell, Padre Pio knelt alone. A single candle burned beside him, its flame steady, casting long shadows across the rough walls. His rosary slipped slowly through his fingers, bead by bead, prayer by prayer. His lips moved, but no sound escaped them. This was not a night of spoken words, it was a night of listening. The silence grew so deep that it became almost tangible. Padre Pio could hear his own breathing. He could feel the slow rhythm of his heart. Time seemed to stretch, as though eternity had pressed itself gently into the present moment. Then, without warning, the air changed. A sudden cold seeped into the room, not the cold of night or stone, but something sharper, heavier. It clung to the skin. The candle's flame trembled, bending sideways as if brushed by an unseen hand, though not a single breath of wind stirred the room. Padre Pio lifted his head. He had felt this before. It was not fear that rose within him, but recognition. The cold did not come to harm, it came to announce. His fingers tightened around the rosary as the silence thickened, no longer empty, but watchful. The shadows along the walls seemed to deepen, gathering weight, as if something unseen stood just beyond the reach of sight. Padre Pio did not turn. He did not speak. He waited. For some presences do not arrive with footsteps, and some visitors do not pass through doors. They emerge from a realm where sound no longer exists, where regret has a voice but no body. In the depths of his soul, a quiet understanding formed, one shaped by years of bearing the wounds of Christ and the sorrows of others. Not every soul finds the courage to stand before heaven's gate. Some wander instead. They linger between memory and judgment, between what was done and what can never be undone. They search not for escape, but for a witness, someone who can hear what the world can no longer bear to hear. Padre Pio closed his eyes and whispered, not to the room, but to eternity itself. Some souls do not knock on heaven's door. They wander, seeking a witness. The candle flickered once more, and the night grew heavier still. The silence finally broke, not with a sound, but with a presence. From the corner of the cell where the candlelight struggled to reach, a shape began to form. At first it was only a shadow, darker than the others, standing where no shadow should stand. Then the air thickened, heavy with a stench that did not belong to the living world, damp earth, cold stone, and long-suffered pain. Padre Pio slowly turned. Before him stood the spirit of an old woman. Her body appeared fragile and bent, as though still carrying the weight of many unforgiven years. Her face was deeply lined, not merely by age, but by fear etched into her very being. Her eyes, wide, hollow, and trembling, reflected no malice now, only terror and regret too heavy to conceal. Her clothing hung from her like ashes clinging to a corpse. Torn, colorless, and thin as dust, they seemed less worn than burned by memory itself. Every movement she made stirred the smell of decay, as if the grave had followed her into the room. She did not cry out. She did not scream. Instead, she fell to her knees. The sound was soft, almost unreal, yet Padre Pio felt it echo through his chest. Her head bowed low, her shoulders shaking, not from tears, but from the effort of standing under the unbearable weight of truth. She dared not look at him at first. When she finally spoke, her voice did not come from her mouth alone. It seemed to rise from within her, fractured and thin, like a whisper forced through stone. "Father, I was not sent to be forgiven." Her words trembled. "I was allowed to come, only to speak." Padre Pio remained silent. His eyes, marked by countless visions and unspeakable sufferings, rested upon her with neither judgment nor surprise. He had learned long ago that souls who return do not seek comfort. They seek release from silence. The old woman lifted her face slightly. Her eyes met his for a brief moment, and in them lay a terror far deeper than death itself. It was the fear of being seen exactly as she was. "I cannot ask for mercy," she continued, her voice breaking. "Not yet. I have not earned even that." She pressed her hands against the cold stone floor, as if grounding herself to reality, afraid she might be dragged back before finishing what she had come to say. "I beg you only this," she whispered. "Let me speak before the memory consumes me." The candle flickered violently, and Padre Pio knew the confession that was about to be spoken did not belong to this world alone. The old woman drew a breath she no longer needed. Her hands trembled as she began, not with names, but with the truth she had buried longest. "It did not begin with murder," she said softly. "It began with envy." Her voice grew steadier, as though confession itself had become a punishment she had rehearsed for years. "There was a family who lived beside me. They were not perfect, but they were happy. Their home was warm, their laughter reached my windows at night." She lowered her head, and every sound of their joy felt like an accusation against my emptiness. They had food when she had little. They had children who ran freely while her house remained silent. They prayed together, they ate together, they lived. "And I watched," she whispered. "Day after day I watched, until love turned into bitterness, and bitterness into hatred." She did not strike them. She did not shout. She waited. "I poisoned what I could," she said. "Not always their bodies, sometimes their reputations. Small amounts, careful lies, a whisper here, a rumor there. Accusations spoken softly so they would sound sincere." Her eyes lifted briefly, meeting Padre Pio's. "I told myself I was innocent because my hands remained clean." The poison came later. Small doses mixed into food, an illness that no one questioned, a sickness blamed on fate, on weakness, on God's will. When suspicion arose, she redirected it. False reports, fabricated evidence, tears that convinced even the authorities. "One by one," she continued, her voice hollow now, "they disappeared. The parents weakened first, then the children." At this, her voice fractured. "They were afraid," she said. "They called for their mother. They asked why God was quiet." She pressed her hands against her face, but no tears fell. "I heard them," she admitted, "and I closed my door." The room grew colder. "The family died," she said plainly, "all of them, and the world moved on." She straightened her back, as if bracing for a blow that never came. "And I lived." Years passed. People pitied her, they helped her, they called her righteous. No one ever suspected. And in all those years she felt no remorse. Not once, she confessed. I slept peacefully, I prayed loudly, I aged quietly. She looked at Padre Pio then, her eyes empty of excuses. I did not repent because I believed I had won. Silence followed her words, a silence heavy with the weight of innocent lives unavenged. And in that stillness, Padre Pio understood. The greatest horror was not what she had done, but how easily she had lived with it. The old woman paused. For the first time since her apparition, fear silenced her. "When I died," she said at last, "I expected something." Her voice lowered, stripped of all pretense. "I had been told there would be light, angels, comfort, or at least darkness that would numb the mind." Her hollow eyes fixed on the floor. But none of those came. Her death was quiet. No thunder, no warning, no final moment of clarity. She lay alone in her bed as breath slowly abandoned her body. The room did not glow. The walls did not open. No voice called her by name. The candle beside her did not burn brighter. It simply went out. And then, she whispered, there was nothing. Not sleep, not peace, not oblivion. The nothingness peeled away, and what remained was truth, naked and merciless. "There were no angels," she said, her voice shaking. "No demons either, only myself and what I had done." The darkness around her shifted, not outward, but inward, and from within that blackness, faces began to emerge, one by one. The mother appeared first, her eyes hollow, still searching, still pleading. Then the father, bent and broken, his lips forming prayers that had gone unanswered. And then her voice collapsed. The children. Small faces, pale, frozen in fear, their mouths opened as if calling for help that never came. Their hands reached out, not to accuse, but to cling. "They were crying," the old woman sobbed. "Not screaming, crying. The way children cry when they are confused, when they don't understand why they are being abandoned." The sound filled everything. It did not echo. It did not fade. It pierced. "I tried to close my ears," she said, "but I had no body. I tried to turn away, but there was nowhere to go." The faces did not speak. They did not condemn her. They simply remembered, and forced her to remember with them. "In that moment," she whispered, "I understood something too late." Her shoulders trembled. "Hell does not begin with fire. It begins with memory. With the truth you refused while alive, with every face you convinced yourself did not matter, with every excuse stripped away." She lifted her eyes to Padre Pio, terror flooding them anew. "I begged then," she said, "not for forgiveness, but for forgetting." But there was no forgetting, only an endless reliving of what had been done, seen not through her own justifications, but through the eyes of the innocent she had destroyed. "That," she breathed, "was my judgment." The candle in Padre Pio's cell burned low, and in its trembling light he knew some souls are not condemned by God's voice, but by the truth they can no longer escape. The old woman's voice grew quieter, as if the memory itself was pressing against her throat. "After the judgment," she said, "I was not taken away." There was no rest granted to her soul, no sleep, no forgetting. She was not cast into flames, nor locked behind gates. Instead, she remained awake, fully conscious, fully aware, bound to the consequences of what she had done. Time no longer moved forward. It circled, tightening like a chain. "I was made to watch," she whispered. She watched the empty house she had helped silence, the rooms where laughter once lived, the dust settling where children should have grown. Every consequence unfolded before her, endlessly repeated. Each tear she had caused echoed back to her, not once, but without measure. She felt hunger she never fed, fear she never comforted, loss she never acknowledged. "I understood then," she said, her voice hollow, "that rest is a gift, and I no longer deserved it." Then from the depth of that unending awareness, a voice spoke. It did not thunder, it did not accuse, it did not explain. It simply stated the truth. "You destroyed a family," the voice said. The words did not wound, they defined her. "Now you will watch another, unless mercy intervenes." At that moment, a vision was placed before her. She saw a second family, living, breathing, unaware. A modest home, a mother's gentle hands, a father's tired smile. Children who trusted the world enough to sleep without fear. And nearby, another heart was already darkening. Another seed of envy, another whisper of resentment, another path beginning to mirror her own. "I cried out," the old woman said, "not for myself, but because I recognized the pattern. I knew where it would end." For the first time since her death, something within her broke. Not pride, not fear, but the illusion that she was finished doing harm. And then the voice spoke again. "You may return once." One moment, one witness, one warning. She was not promised forgiveness. She was not assured release. Only this, an unbearable mercy laced with responsibility. "To speak," she said softly, "to confess, and to beg someone holier than myself to see what I had already made myself blind to." Her gaze lifted to Padre Pio, trembling with something close to despair. "I was not sent to save myself," she said. "I was sent to prevent the echo of my sin." The candle flickered. The room seemed to grow smaller, and Padre Pio understood the weight of what stood before him, a soul condemned not merely to suffer, but to warn, knowing that mercy, if it came at all, would come only through another's obedience. For some punishments are not about pain, but about being forced to look and to care when it is almost too late. As the old woman fell silent, the air in the cell shifted once more. Padre Pio felt it before he saw it, a pressure behind the eyes, a tightening of the heart. His hands gripped the rosary as the walls of the room seemed to fade, not disappearing, but receding, as if reality itself were being pulled back like a veil. And then the vision came. Before him appeared another family. They lived in a small weathered house on the edge of a village. The roof sagged slightly. The walls bore the marks of time and poverty. Yet inside there was warmth, humble, fragile, but real. A father returned home each evening with tired hands and honest sweat. A mother moved quietly through the rooms, her love expressed in small gestures. A bowl of soup shared, a blanket pulled higher at night. Children slept there. Their faces were peaceful, unaware, trusting. Padre Pio felt his chest tighten. This family had little, but what they possessed was enough. Then the vision darkened. From the edges of the scene, another figure emerged, a woman watching from a distance. Her eyes lingered too long. Her smile never reached her gaze. Within her heart, something twisted slowly, patiently. Envy. She measured their happiness against her own emptiness. She counted what they had and what she lacked. And as before, resentment grew not through violence, but through quiet comparison. Padre Pio saw her thoughts forming before her actions. He saw whispered conversations, feigned concern, calculated kindness. He saw plans taking shape long before hands ever moved. The pattern was unmistakable. The same path, the same descent, the same lie told gently enough to feel justified. "No," Padre Pio whispered, though no sound left his lips. He saw moments that had not yet happened, an illness that would be blamed on weakness, a suspicion planted where trust once lived, authorities misled by tears that hid intention, the machinery of destruction assembling itself, piece by piece. And yet, no blood had been spilled, no child had cried out. The vision trembled, suspended in a terrifying stillness between innocence and catastrophe. Padre Pio understood then what made this vision more dreadful than the last. This time, the sin was still preventable, but the intent was already complete. He felt the truth strike him with crushing clarity. In the eyes of heaven, the crime had already begun. For evil does not start with action. It starts the moment the heart chooses destruction over love. The vision faded, leaving the cell cold and silent once more. Padre Pio bowed his head, shaken to the core. He had been shown not a tragedy, but a choice, and he knew that what he did next would determine whether this family would remain a vision or become another memory that would haunt a soul for eternity. Padre Pio remained kneeling long after the vision faded. His body trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what had been entrusted to him. The room was once again solid, the walls returned, the candle steady, yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. For Padre Pio did not see the world as others did. From the moment God had marked him with suffering, his sight had been opened beyond appearances. He saw souls that still walked the earth, burdened by invisible choices. And he saw souls that no longer belonged to time, carrying truths too heavy to remain hidden. To him, death was not always death. He knew the difference. There were deaths that came as accidents, sudden, senseless, wrapped in mystery. And there were deaths born of intention, shaped quietly by human will long before the final moment arrived. Padre Pio could distinguish them. He had learned that violence often wears the mask of misfortune, that evil prefers disguise to force, and that the most dangerous acts are those that convince the world nothing was done at all. The realization made his hands shake. He pressed his palm against his chest as a familiar pain flared, a reminder that divine knowledge is never given without cost. To see what others cannot is to suffer what others are spared. Tears welled in his eyes, not for himself, but for the fragile boundary separating mercy from catastrophe. "Why show me this?" his heart cried, though his lips remained sealed. And in the depth of his spirit, the answer formed, not as words, but as certainty. God reveals not to satisfy curiosity, not to terrify, not to be admired. He reveals to save. Padre Pio understood then that this vision was not a story meant to be told, but a warning meant to be acted upon. Silence would be betrayal. Delay would be complicity. He bowed his head, the rosary tightening around his fingers until they ached. If I turn away, he thought, I become a witness only. But if I act, I become a servant. The burden was clear. To intervene would invite misunderstanding, ridicule, accusation. He would be called paranoid, dramatic, intrusive. Yet none of that mattered when weighed against the lives placed before him. Padre Pio inhaled slowly, steadying his trembling body. "Lord," he whispered at last, "you have shown me what the world cannot see." He rose from the floor, his resolve hardening through the pain. You did not reveal this so it could be remembered, he understood. You revealed it so it could be stopped. And with that realization, Padre Pio prepared himself, not to speak of visions, but to act with courage, knowing that obedience, not understanding, was the true measure of faith. For some knowledge is given not as a gift, but as a responsibility that must be carried even when it breaks the heart. Padre Pio did not sleep that night. At dawn, while the monastery still lay wrapped in silence, he rose with urgency burning in his chest. He knew that evil, once conceived, does not wait. Sin moves quietly but relentlessly, and time, when mercy is at stake, is never neutral. He began by sending word. Not proclamations, not accusations, but warnings, carefully measured, heavy with concern. He called for a trusted brother and spoke in low tones, his words restrained, yet unmistakably serious. "Go," he instructed, "and tell the local priest that a danger unseen approaches a certain family. He will understand." Then he wrote. The letter was brief. No mention of visions, no supernatural claims, only a sense of moral urgency wrapped in humility. "There are moments," he wrote, "when prudence demands distance. Advise them to leave their home for a time, not out of fear, but wisdom." His handwriting trembled, not from doubt, but from the knowledge that every word mattered. Before the sun had fully risen, Padre Pio reached out again, this time directly to the local priest responsible for the village near the family's home. When the priest arrived, confused but respectful, Padre Pio spoke with the gravity of one who carried more than he could explain. "There is no accident in what I am about to say," Padre Pio told him. "What appears ordinary may soon become irreversible." He did not name the woman. He did not describe the plan. He spoke only of patterns, of envy allowed to grow unchecked, of dangers that arrive wearing the face of concern. "Tell the family to leave," he said quietly, "just for a while. Tell them it is counsel, not command." The priest hesitated. Padre Pio met his eyes. "Trust me," he said, "not as a mystic, but as a shepherd." The warning was delivered that same day. Confused, frightened, but obedient, the family gathered what little they owned and left their home, believing it to be only a temporary absence. They did not know what they were escaping. They only knew they were being protected, and protection was enough. Days later, suspicions surfaced. Questions were asked. A lie contradicted itself. A plan, once confident in secrecy, began to unravel under the weight of its own inconsistencies. What had been carefully prepared fell apart without violence. No blood was spilled, no child cried out in fear, no home was turned into a grave. The machinery of destruction collapsed, not through force, but through interruption. When Padre Pio learned that the family was safe, he closed his eyes and exhaled a breath he felt he had been holding since the vision began. The race had been won, not against time, but against sin. And for the first time since the apparition appeared, the night within him grew quiet. For evil, once exposed to the light of obedience, loses its power, not because it is destroyed, but because it is denied completion. The truth did not arrive with noise. It came quietly, the way all lies eventually do, by failing to hold their shape. Questions were asked where there had once been trust. Timelines no longer aligned. Words spoken in confidence contradicted one another. The careful story the woman had woven began to unravel, thread by thread, until even she could no longer keep track of what was real. No one raised a hand, no door was forced open, no violence followed. There was only truth, slow, undeniable, and exposed by its own weight. What had been planned in secrecy collapsed under simple light. The accusations lost credibility. The intentions, once hidden beneath concern and false kindness, became visible to those willing to see. And the family lived. They returned home later, unaware of how close they had come to destruction. Their house still stood. Their children still laughed. Life resumed, not as a miracle proclaimed, but as a mercy quietly granted. Yet not all were freed. In the stillness that followed, Padre Pio sensed it clearly. The soul who had warned him remained bound. Her burden was lighter, but her sentence unfinished. One family had been saved, but another could not be restored. Some acts of mercy do not erase the past, they only prevent it from repeating. And in that sobering truth, Padre Pio understood. Evil may collapse in the world of the living, but its echo can remain where time no longer heals. She returned without warning. There was no sudden cold this time, no trembling candle. The old woman appeared quietly, standing where the shadows rested, her form thinner, dimmer, as if part of her had already been taken away. She did not weep. Her face held no terror now, only emptiness, the stillness of a soul that had spoken all it could speak. "I was allowed to save what I once destroyed," she said softly, "but I cannot undo what I did." The words were not a plea, they were an acceptance. She did not ask for release. She did not ask where she would go. Padre Pio rose slowly and began to pray. He offered no promises, only intercession. Each word carried not certainty, but hope, entrusted to God alone. The rosary moved through his fingers as he prayed for mercy beyond human measure. When he lifted his eyes again, she was gone. The room felt lighter. And yet the silence remained, a reminder that some souls depart not healed, but heard. Padre Pio later explained with quiet clarity that God forgives, but forgiveness does not erase consequence. Mercy heals the soul, yet truth must still be faced. Prayer, he taught, can shorten suffering and lighten what justice requires, but no sin is ever small when it destroys love, trust, or innocence. What happened was not meant to terrify, but to awaken. Envy kills long before a weapon is raised. Evil begins the moment intention turns away from compassion. Each of us, in unseen ways, stands at a crossroads, becoming either the cause of destruction or the one who intervenes before it takes form. The choice is made not in public acts, but in the quiet of the inner life. In the final image, Padre Pio kneels in the chapel at dawn, the rosary resting in his hands, morning light filtering softly through stone walls. And his message lingers, spoken slowly and low. Some souls return not to frighten us, but to warn us, before it is too late.